All right, let's jump right into today's explainer. We're looking at a seriously viral and honestly absolutely scathing piece of commentary that's been making huge waves online. The text we're breaking down today offers a really sharp critique of a recent super high-profile MrBeast parody that featured some of India's absolute top YouTube creators. Now, you'd think a massive collaboration like that would be celebrated, right? Well, not exactly. The author of this piece argues that the event actually exposed a severe lack of originality in the influencer space. So throughout this explainer, we're going to objectively map out the author's arguments and figure out exactly why this source claims the entire industry is facing a widespread crisis of creativity.
Okay, let's dive into this. The author deconstructs the whole facade of the influencer economy through 5 distinct pillars. We're looking at the illusion of grandeur, vulgarity over creativity, the lazy content crisis, dollars, greed and hypocrisy, and lastly, fake bonds and real money.
So, kicking things off with Section 1, the illusion of grandeur, hype versus reality.
Look, when you get the biggest names in the Indian YouTube community to share a single screen for a 22-minute video, the audience naturally expects something historic. I mean, there were massive promises made here, including claims of blowing through budgets of 10 crore rupees. But according to the critique, the reality of the final product just felt hollow. It completely failed to deliver on that immense hype. The author actually delivers this brutal verdict on the whole spectacle. Money came, but class didn't. The article essentially argues that despite these massive production budgets and the combined fame of the cast, wealth and viewership numbers just didn't translate into actual quality. You can throw millions of rupees at a screen, sure, but it simply can't cover up a fundamental lack of good writing.
In fact, the author defines this whole situation as a systemic creative bankruptcy. It's absolutely crucial to understand that the article frames this failure not just as, one bad script, but as a symptom of a much larger disease that's infecting the entire creator ecosystem. Instead of brainstorming original ideas, the source argues these so-called top creators are relying entirely on yelling, ego-driven banter, and just leaning on their massive subscriber counts to carry the content.
Moving right along to Section 2, vulgarity over creativity, swearing as a substitute.
The critique takes a really sharp turn here to focus on the specific language used in the parody. The author argues that instead of utilizing genuine, clever, comedic writing, the creators just used stale abuses and swearing as a cheap substitute for humor. Whether it was the dialogue between characters or sudden cameos, the source claims the standard of conversation completely hit rock bottom, which honestly brings up a critical question raised by the source. Are these really the role models for millions of kids? The article specifically calls out major gamers and creators. We're talking about Triggered Insaan, Mythpat, and Mortal. These are individuals who have massive, highly impressionable younger audiences, and the author questions the responsibility of these creators who freely and shamelessly use offensive language on screen, asking if the community's idea of creativity now just boils down to who can scream the loudest and use the dirtiest curse words.
And this brilliantly illustrates the problem. Picture a specific scene around a carom board in the video. One creator brags, "I have 20 million subscribers," while another retorts, "I have 19 million. The author views this scene, which features characters played by Bhuvan Bam and Harsh Beniwal, not as comedy, but as a completely pathetic ego clash. The critique argues that the creators are so hyper-fixated on their numbers that they just throw their dignity out the window. It makes the whole exchange feel way more like a petty street fight than meaningful entertainment from supposed industry leaders.
Which brings us to Section 3, the lazy content crisis, reactions, and pseudo-knowledge.
Now, the critique doesn't just stop at the parody video itself. It takes specific aim at the broader, lazy formats that are currently dominating the platform. The author suggests that when creators run out of original ideas, they just resort to leeching off the work of others or fabricating fake suspense, and the author points to some very specific examples. First up, reaction channels. The text mentions a scene where one creator plays Minecraft while another literally just makes weird noises at the screen and laughs without adding any real creative value. Second, the critique slams creators who actually joke about divorcing their wives just to get views, asking if these influencers are so hungry for dollars that they're now doing giveaways of their personal relationships. No way, right? Finally, the author takes aim at pseudo-intellectual podcasters who constantly exploit topics like aliens, ghosts, and the afterlife just to manufacture suspense and farm clicks.
The source aggressively tackles this podcasting trend, highlighting a specific moment in the parody aimed at creators like BeerBiceps. The text states that the constant barrage of fake knowledge and spiritual grandstanding has made the very sight of a podcast microphone nauseating to audiences. The critique argues these podcasters pose as deep gurus but are actually just suspense machines, and that the feeling of wanting to vomit at the sight of a podcast mic is a very real pain shared by the internet audience.
All right, let's look at Section 4.
Dollars, greed, and hypocrisy, the ultimate U-turn. Here, the author shifts focus to the glaring contradictions in how these creators present themselves to the world versus how they act when actual money is on the table. The argument is that there is a massive level of hypocrisy woven into the fabric of this community. The source highlights a huge irony. Notice how Indian creators act in front of foreign guests, like the caricature of I Show Speed. The article claims they suddenly act sanskari, incredibly cultured, straightforward, and pure, almost as if they're the most innocent people on earth. But the moment MrBeast's bag of dollars is introduced, they do the ultimate U-turn. Their pure greed and hunger for views are instantly exposed, completely shattering that cultured facade.
The critique notes that this grand, supposedly international collaboration ultimately devolved into a desperate plea. The video concludes with all these self-proclaimed top-tier creators screaming in unison to just subscribe. The author points out that no matter how big or international these creators think they are, their ultimate desperate goal is simply to beg the audience to push the red button. Finally, we hit Section 5, Fake Bonds and Real Money, Behind the Scenes.
The source reveals its most cynical observation yet about the illusion of brotherhood within the YouTube industry. It argues that the camaraderie you see on screen is literally nothing more than a well-rehearsed performance. For the audience, the reality is toxic wars in the comment sections, where fan armies fight each other endlessly. But behind the scenes, these influencers aren't fighting. They're using the emotional investment of their fans to count their money and secure lucrative brand endorsements, like Winzo. The article boldly claims that hugging on camera while counting each other's subscribers off camera is the ultimate hypocrisy of these big creators. It proves their true priorities lie entirely in monetization and self-promotion.
To wrap up this blistering review, the text delivers a hilarious, cutting final analogy. The author tells the creators that the audience was better off with a cheap melody toffee because at least it doesn't ruin the taste in your mouth. The source issues a stern warning. You absolutely have the right to make parodies, but slapping a scripted disclaimer on a video full of abuses doesn't magically make it comedy. If you can't create content without dragging dialogue through the mud, you really should stop calling yourselves industry leaders.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought to conclude our explainer today. So, what does this all mean? Do subscriber counts truly dictate the quality of entertainment? Well, the source we analyzed today vehemently says no. The author argues that while these creators might rake in millions of dollars in views, true innovation in class simply cannot be bought. It challenges us, as the audience, to look past the subscriber counts and reflect on the true value and artistic merit of the media we consume every single day. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this fascinating critique, and I highly encourage you to keep questioning the media landscape around you. See you next time.